If existence can be fully explained, why does the act of explanation itself already assume that existence is there? This question may sound abstract, but it points to a foundational paradox in modern thinking. Much of contemporary knowledge operates on the assumption that reality becomes legitimate only when it can be reduced to causes, mechanisms, models, or equations. If something can be explained, it is treated as real. If it resists explanation, it is often labeled incomplete, subjective, or even illusory. At first glance, this seems reasonable. Scientific progress has been driven by explanatory power, yet a subtle contradiction appears when this logic is applied universally. Every explanation already presupposes awareness, language, cognition, and presence. Explanations occur within existence. They do not stand outside it. This lecture is not an argument against science, rationality, or analysis. It is an examination of the limits of explanatory reduction. The central thesis, articulated with remarkable rigor by Ibn Arabi, is precise. Existence cannot be explained away because explanation itself is one of existence's expressions. Existence is not a problem waiting for a solution. It is the condition that allows problems, solutions, and explanations to appear in the first place. Modern humans live under what can be called explanatory pressure. There is a persistent psychological need to account for, justify, and rationalize everything. Ambiguity feels uncomfortable. Irreducibility feels threatening. When something cannot be clearly explained, anxiety increases rather than curiosity. From a cognitive perspective, reductionism functions as a control strategy. By breaking complex wholes into smaller, measurable parts, the mind gains a sense of predictability. Attention bias favors what can be quantified, modeled, or visually mapped. This approach is enormously effective in engineering and medicine, but when extended to existence itself, it produces unintended consequences. Psychologically, people experience existential stress when major life events resist explanation, loss, identity crises, meaning sudden change, emotional dysregulation, often follows when explanation fails to restore certainty. You can explain consciousness through neural correlates, but that does not remove the raw fact of experiencing. You can explain emotions biologically, but the lived reality of feeling remains untouched. This raises a critical question. What if the failure to explain existence is not a weakness of thought, but a misunderstanding of what existence is? Ibn Arabi is often misunderstood as a purely mystical or anti-rational thinker. In reality, he was a meticulous metaphysician whose work demonstrates extraordinary logical discipline. His central project was not to reject intellect, but to understand being with precision. A core distinction in his thought is between existence itself and the concepts we form about existence. Language, logic, and explanation operate at the level of description. They describe relationships, functions, and patterns. They do not generate existence, nor do they stand prior to it. One of Ibn Arabi's most important claims is that existence is self-evident, but not derivable. It cannot be proven in the way propositions are proven, because proof already assumes being. Likewise, existence cannot be denied without contradiction, because denial presupposes awareness and presence. This is not a claim that everything is mysterious or unknowable. It is a precise epistemological boundary. Explanation has a domain, and existence is not located inside that domain. Modern philosophy of mind and cognitive science increasingly echo this insight, particularly in discussions of irreducibility and first-person experience. To explain anything, something must already be. Causes, laws, and mechanisms all presuppose existence. You can explain why a phenomenon occurs, under what conditions it appears, and how it behaves. What you cannot do without circularity is explain why existence exists. Ibn Arabi's insight is straightforward but often overlooked. Existence is not an object among other objects. It is the field within which objects, causes, and explanations arise. Treating existence as if it were one more thing to be explained mistakes the background condition for a foreground product. Consider a simple example. Neuroscience can explain how eyesight functions, retinal cells, neural pathways, cortical processing, yet none of this explains why seeing occurs at all. The explanatory model maps correlations. It does not account for the fact of awareness itself. This parallels what philosophers of mind call the hard problem of consciousness, the gap between objective mechanism and subjective experience. Even the most rigorous scientific frameworks acknowledge this explanatory gap. Ibn Arabi's contribution is to show that this gap is not accidental. It reflects a category error. Attempting to explain existence away confuses conditions with products another. Central distinction in Ibn Arabi's thought is between conceptual knowledge and lived reality. Conceptual knowledge consists of representations, abstractions, and models. Lived reality is an immediate presence, experience as it is encountered. Concepts never replace what they describe. Naming existence does not contain it. From a cognitive science perspective, this aligns with the map versus territory distinction. Mental models are compressions of reality designed for usefulness, not completeness. Everyday life provides clear examples. Psychological explanations of grief do not eliminate grief. Knowing emotional regulation strategies does not remove the fact of emotion. These explanations can help organize experience, but they do not substitute for the experience itself. Humans often confuse explanatory clarity with existential resolution. When something is explained, it feels mentally settled, even if nothing is changed at the level of being. Ibn Arabi's point is not to reject the explanation, it is to prevent it from being mistaken for reality itself. Explanation organizes experience. It does not replace existence. A common assumption in modern thought is that causal explanation drains meaning. If something can be reduced to mechanisms, it is thought to lose depth or significance. Ibn Arabi directly challenges this assumption. Explanation adds layers. It does not exhaust reality. Meaning is not dissolved by mechanism. Explaining love through attachment. Theory does not eliminate love. Describing neurochemical processes does not negate relational meaning. These explanations coexist with lived significance. From a neuroscientific perspective, identifying correlates does not cancel phenomena. Functional explanations and subjective experience operate on different levels. Ibn Arabi is not anti-causality. He does not deny chains of cause and effect. What he rejects is the idea that causality replaces being. Reduction explains how something operates. It does not explain that it is. Meaning persists because existence persists. Regardless of how detailed our explanations become, at the deepest level, the paradox becomes unavoidable. To explain existence itself, one would need a position outside existence. No such position is available. Even the attempt to deny existence presupposes awareness and presence. Ibn Arabi's subtle move is to recognize that existence is known by being it, not by standing apart from it. This resonates strongly with phenomenological philosophy, which emphasizes givenness, how things appear before interpretation. Awareness cannot observe itself as an object without distortion. Any attempt to do so turns presence into a concept, which is already a step removed. This does not end the inquiry or discourage investigation. Instead, it reorients inquiry toward intellectual humility. Some limits are not failures of thought. They are markers of coherence, translated into modern psychological terms. Ibn Arabi's insight offers practical benefits. It reduces existential over-analysis, the tendency to ruminate endlessly when explanations fail. Allowing uncertainty without cognitive collapse improves emotional regulation. In therapeutic contexts, a crucial distinction is made between explanation and validation. Understanding why an experience occurs does not invalidate the experience itself. Mindfulness-based approaches reflect this logic by emphasizing observation without forced conceptual closure. From a neuroscientific perspective, excessive interpretive activity is associated with overactivation of the default mode network. Practices that reduce overinterpretation are linked to decreased rumination and improved psychological well-being. The behavioral takeaway is simple but profound. Use explanation as a tool, not as a substitute for being. Existence cannot be explained away, because explanation belongs to existence. This is the central insight of Ibn Arabi's analysis. His contribution is not a mystical escape from reason, but a rational boundary placed around it. He clarifies where thought applies and where it does not. Science, psychology, and philosophy remain valid and indispensable within their proper scope. None of them abolish the basic fact of being. When explanation reaches its limit, existence does not disappear. It becomes unmistakably present. Understanding this does not weaken knowledge, it strengthens it by placing it on coherent ground.